Okay, we are live, baby, but we got to let it breathe just for a moment. Hang tight, y'all. Hang tight. Really excited to talk with you this evening, everybody. Hope you're doing well. Holy smokes. I see that Sam Bam worked out the kinks, dude. We're going to grab him. Hold that thought 1 second, Sam Bam. I got to do the intro. Welcome in, everybody. It's the Mile High Huddle podcast. What is good? I'm your host, Chad Jensen. With me, my fellow football priest, who you know, who you love, Zack Kelberman. Zach, Sam Bam has been battling through the YouTube, I don't know, back end trolls, engineering elves that mess with the ability to put in a super chat. He's finally busted through from the top rope. Thank you, Sam. Appreciate you, big dog. He's saying, hey, guys, I finally got my super chat problem fixed on my lappy. Hope all is well. Go Broncos. All is well. And also a super sticker. So, yeah, definitely working in full effect for Sam Bam. Thank you, bro. We're going to be keeping an eye out for any specific topics, but man, that does make you feel good, Zach, when you go live and boom, there's a top rope super chat. You're going, this is where I'm supposed to be at this very moment in time.
Yeah, this wasn't Sam Bam. This was Sam Bam, just like Emerald Lagasse used to say. And definitely appreciate you, Sam. Was not necessary, but definitely appreciated. We're just happy to have you in the swing as always.
Yeah, so kind of interesting. We weren't sure if we were going to have Scott in the room tonight because he's traveling to Mobile for the Senior Bowl. But thankfully, he's like, hey, what else am I going to do? I've been driving all day. I'm at the hotel. I guess I'm just going to log in and do my job. What are you going to do? We're grateful to have him here because it's a grind, man. You're in the car 5 hours. By the time you get out, Zach, you feel like you're vibrating. You know, you're like,
yeah.
So we're stoked to have Scott. But what we're even more excited about is what he's going to be doing all week long at the Senior Bowl. The practices start tomorrow, and Zach, on the doorstep of the Senior Bowl, some scuttlebutt. I'm going to let you kind of break it down, but Cecil Lammy, friend of MHH, great guy, much love and respect to an OG like Cecil, but he's a big draft nerd, right? Draft expert, been going to the Senior Bowl, the Shrine, that whole rotation. I've lost count now of how many years straight that he's done it, but something like 12, 13, 14, something like that. So he's very plugged in, not just with draft media, Zach, but agents, scouts, sources around the league. Explain now, with that stage being set, what the rumor is about Sean Payton.
Yeah, I'm going to read it word for word what Cecil tweeted early this morning, a little after midnight Monday. So this was word for word from Cecil, quote, there is a belief by many in the scouting community that Sean Payton has something cooking for the early portion of the NFL draft. People I trust do not see Denver waiting for a falling QB. These evaluators believe the Broncos will make a big move up for a quarterback. Lammy added, the NFL thinks Payton is going to move up no matter what. Don't ask about compensation. Some think it won't matter because Sean Payton won't wait on a quarterback. He wants his guy now, Chad. And as I wrote in the article, if the Broncos feel like a franchise long-term elite slam dunk franchise quarterback exists in this class and they believe they can get him by hook or by crook, there is no cost too high. It's cost prohibitive. It's another mortgage of the future scenario after trading for Russell Wilson, after trading for Sean Payton, but it's the most important position in sports, and the Broncos can't become a championship contending team without that long-term quarterback in place.
Indeed. It sounds like, remember the Rams' little rallying cry after they won the Super Bowl, F word them picks,
Yeah.
It's kind of like that mentality of whatever it takes, and we'll see. But just the devil's advocate is, hey, last thing we've heard about those three teams at the top, it's that they're not all that interested in moving back. It would, but there's always a price. There's usually, and maybe always is an absolute I shouldn't use. We're talking about the NFL here, but there's often a price, and it might be a little bit steep to get a team who's saying, nah, we're not moving to trade up. Now there's that, or trade back. There's that one rumor dating all the way back to 2018, the Hall of Fame QB class, that John Elway was just like, got to have him some Sam Darnold but he knew the Jets wanted him. So he tried to get in front of the Jets at number 2 with the Giants, but the Giants, quote, and I apologize, I don't remember who the source of this is, but did not return his phone call. So a little bit of this, Zach, is contingent on one of those 3 teams anyway, picking up the phone and returning a call from Sean Payton, George Payton.
It's true. Yeah. You can't force a team to trade out. It takes 2 to tango. I don't know if they're going to move up to number 1 because that pick is probably locked into Caleb Williams. And even though Sean Payton thought Caleb Williams was a generational prospect, Lammy believes that Drake May, the second best quarterback in this year's class, would be an ideal Sean Payton fit. And for Drake May, you'd probably have to move up to number 2 to secure his services. Make sure that you get him. What would it cost to move up to number 2 from number 12? Multiple first-round picks, a smattering of second and third-round picks, and probably a starting player or 2. I don't know if that means Pat Surtain or Justin Simmons, but it's going to cost you a pretty penny. But then again, like I said, if Sean Payton, George Payton, the whole collective believes that Drake May can win the Broncos the Super Bowl in the next 10 years, that is a deal that you do.
I'm curious, guys. Are you willing to give up? Are you willing to pay through the nose, so to speak, to get that guy, to get the franchise quarterback this team has been missing for a long time, and Sean Payton, his complement under center? Are you willing to? Is a couple of firsts, 3 firsts maybe, and Patrick Surtain, is that too rich for your blood? Let us know in the chat. The Papa Bear, David McElrath, in the house with a super chat. Thank you, big dog. Much love and respect. We had a blast hanging out with you a few months back, and we look forward to the next meet and greet. It's going to be a gas. But Buckham times 3. Amen to that, my dog. John Juno jumping in. And thank you, John. You've been with us a long time too, my friend. It's great to see you. Looks like the family's doing well. He says, if Bo Nix or Michael Penix is there at 12, would you take him or trade back later into the first, grab a second and a fourth, and hope you can get one of them later? We talked a little bit about this, not a little bit, a lot of bit about that last night, John. And my answer is, the same today, even with the new context, Zach, of this rumor. It's the same as yesterday, which is, if you believe Bo Nix is your guy, which it doesn't sound like there hasn't really been any smoke on the trail connecting Broncos and Penix yet. That doesn't necessarily mean there isn't interest, but there's been a lot of smoke about Bo Nix. So if you believe he's your guy, I do not risk for one freaking second. And again, this is also, Zach, I think, kind of also keeping in mind that exempting the trade up rumor, or they can't make the trade up. So they're sitting there at 12 or whatever. Nix, I'm taking Nix, period. If I believe he's my guy, I'm taking Nix. I'm not even thinking twice about that at 12.
Yeah, we're in lockstep there, Chad. If you're 100% sold on Bo Nix or Michael Penix at 12, just take him and secure your guy. But if you're even 1% unsure that they can be the answer, my ideal scenario, we talked about it like last night, like you said, move back a few spots, stockpile some capital, be it a second or third round pick. And one of those quarterbacks should still be there if you move down to, let's say, 15 or 16. That would be ideal. But again, if Sean Payton is convinced, make the pick at 12.
Lots more to get to, guys, including your thoughts on this. But first, we got to remind you, now that the conference title games are in the books, we know who's going to be in the Super Bowl, the Niners and the Chiefs. Let's face it, as much as we don't like the Chiefs, we're all going to be watching that game in hopes of seeing another Niners Super Bowl championship while you're celebrating the Super Bowl. And in between, I mean, there's 2 weeks to go till the Super Bowl. We got many a weekday, a weekend in between. Make sure you're celebrating with Little Caesars, the official pizza sponsor of the NFL. You order online during the Pizza pregame, 1 hour before. This is on Sunday, Super Bowl Sunday, and 3 hours after, and get ready for some football and fun by choosing your favorite Little Caesars pizza or picking the toppings that you crave. Either way, you're going to win.
And let's be honest about something else, Chad. No one's going to want to cook for themselves on Super Bowl Sunday. You're going to want to go out, pick something up easy, convenient for your party, anything like that. Get yourself a pizza, some breadsticks, a 2-liter, have yourself a good time while the Niners defeat the Kansas City Chiefs. And speaking of winning, everyone scores with convenient delivery or our in-store pizza portal pickup. So grab some friends and enjoy a few slices during the Super Bowl.
You know who throws one hell of a Super Bowl party?
Who's that?
Is my old man, the
Sure.
man, the myth, the legend, Mark Jensen. And as much as I love his Super Bowl parties, you know, everyone is expected to bring a little something, something. You know, it's like not dinner per se. It's like potluck. I even hate using that word because I hear potluck and the weirdo in me, OCD guy goes, "Ugh," because I don't like. No problem for me going and sitting down in a restaurant and eating food, Zach, that strangers have prepared.
I'm the
But
same way.
going to someone's home and eating food strangers have prepared that are just chilling, like not in a restaurant. My brain has to like fight through that.
Right there with you.
But the reason I'm even bringing this up is, you talked about the convenience of, hey, who wants to cook on Super Bowl Sunday, right? Little Caesars, ding, 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 pizza, pizza. Well, you're supposed to bring your own thing to a Mark Jensen Super Bowl party, and it's heavily, strongly encouraged that it's something that you made, not just something that, y'all, let's swing by and grab some chips and salsa from the grocery store on our way. And so that results in, you do have to spend some time at it, but also all the dishes, the side dishes and whatnot, it's a feast.
I hate the dishes. I love the eating part, Chad. I hate the aftermath of eating. But
Most definitely.
We have Phil hopping in. Good evening, Chad, Zach, and Deacon Scott. Can't wait to get reports from Scott on all the great prospects we will have available to us. Hashtag Buckham, hashtag Go Broncos, MHH for life. Yeah, Phil, I'm right there with you. We're so fortunate to have Scott down in Mobile, and we're looking forward to all the updates he's going to bring. A lot of video content on the way, so be sure to stay tuned to that.
Also, we got Patrick jumping in. Great to see you. The coffee dealer here. He's got all the MHH hosts hooked. Dialed in. He figured it out. Like first hit's free, and then he knows he's got him. He gets him addicted, and it's over. But this guy knows coffee, and of course, one of the great members of our community. Appreciate you, Patrick, and the Ronk as well. So good to see you. Thank you for checking in. I don't know what we do without the mayor of our community, especially on Facebook, Michael Ronquillo. Love you, big dog. But Zach, let's see what Taylor has to say here with a super chat. You the man. He says, with how the Russell Wilson trade went, I'm cautious about doing big trades for a little while. People say the Wilson trade is the worst in NFL history. I don't know about that, but I understand, my first impulse, Zach, when we learned about, oh, Russ's bench, we all knew what that meant, right? Broncos trending away from Russ, despite the onerous, nay, punitive consequences of moving on from him relative to the salary cap. We all knew what that meant. And initially I was like, they got to get a quarterback the old fashioned way. But at the same time, I'm that fan in me is rocking back and forth in the corner, traumatized from these last two off seasons of trading away the farm. But I've circled back, time, it does heal all wounds, but it also, the fullness of time gives you the opportunity to kind of weigh things, measure it out. Then you come back with a more, I'll use the word again, measured take. I'm okay with trading right now. You don't really have a choice. How many more sub 500 seasons do you want? They're just going to keep stacking up, Zach, until they get the guy. And then Taylor's, by the way, throwing in with another super, his top three QBs in the class, Penix, Nix, and McCarthy from Michigan. Very interesting. Your thoughts?
I'm there with you. I mean, just because you burned your hand on the stove doesn't mean you never turn the oven on again, Chad. I mean, they have to keep swinging until they hit that home run, until they find their guy. If nothing else, watching this year's playoffs proves that the Broncos need their own developmental guy in-house to start, whether it's year one, year two, going forward. And I would disagree that the Russell Wilson trade was the worst in NFL history. I think the Deshaun Watson trade is a little bit more precarious, if only because the payoff hasn't been there on the field, and you gave up a fully guaranteed contract for a quarterback that had off-field issues, let's say. At least with Russell Wilson, Chad, you never had the off-field concerns.
Yeah, it's weird because with Russ, yes, you do not get the risk of the off the field rake, stepping on rakes and the possibilities of controversy, but you get all the weird hate on Russ, like the outsized, hey, let's make a 9-time Pro Bowl quarterback who's a good person into a national lampoon because he likes to do, high knees on the plane between while he's flying over the Atlantic on the way to the UK, etc. Just so yeah, a little tone deaf at times and a little bit of a cheese ball and cornball at times, but a good guy. So he does any high profile, I guess, though, Zach, quarterback is always going to bring in some level of, outside drama, whether it's because of, negative things they're doing off the field or just being themselves. It happens. Even Peyton Manning. I mean, when Peyton Manning was here, it was a constant circus. It was a constant circus, but typically in a good way. It brought a lot of scrutiny on the Broncos, but I digress.
But I've never seen a quarterback or an athlete or really anyone, save for one person, get the amount of scrutiny and criticism that Russell Wilson has dealt with, Chad. I'm not exactly plugged into the Browns ecosphere on Twitter, but I've not even seen Deshaun Watson get criticized. And you have a case to bash Deshaun Watson as a human and as a football player. You don't have that with Russell Wilson.
Yeah, not since he hightailed it out of Houston. Like all those skeletons, everyone in the NFL seems willing to just kind of, hey, let's let those bodies in the backyard of this dude's, just kind of bygones be bygones. Mike, big dog, love you. Thank you. Mount Rushmore, super chat, superstar in the hizzy. Says, hey guys, sorry I've been MIA, but I've been watching, but late. I think the Broncos will deal Jerry Jeudy and Patrick Surtain along with the number 12 pick to move up. I don't think any of the top 3 teams will budge. Go MHH. Time will tell. Time will tell. All 3 of those teams, Zach, are quarterback needy right now. What are you hearing about Chicago and Justin Fields?
It's confusing because they kept their head coach, which leads me to believe that they're going to hold firm at quarterback. But when you hold the number 1 draft pick, Chad, how do you not take who I think will be an upgrade on Fields? I'm not a Fields guy. He's a great runner, but he's a pretty awful passer. I don't think he's the franchise quarterback. I think they're going to Trey Lance him, which is ship him off for a mid-round pick and then, get another guy and try to succeed with him. But to Mike's point here, this wouldn't get it done. It would, the first round pick, 12 overall in PS2, that would be a conversation starter. But what would Jerry Jeudy be worth? A 4th or 5th round pick? You would have to throw a little more into this pot to make a team in the top 3 budge. And that's why the devil and the angels on your shoulder. Do I do that? Do I not do that? We all have our opinions.
Yeah. Ryan, what's going on, big dog? Good to see you. Thank you for the very generous super chat. This time of year, it really does help us keep the lights on. It's not just something we say. So thanks to each and every one of you. Appreciate you. Ryan, you the man. He says, what's up, Priest? Bears can have Caleb Williams. I've watched tape on Drake May, and I have to admit, I'm not that impressed. My targets are Jaden Daniels and Bo Nix. Do y'all think there may be a trade partner that likes Russ that's in the top 5, maybe with a sweetener of Patrick Surtain II thrown in? That's a good question. I don't think so. I just think Russ is relative to the kind of tape he's put up, which again, it's not like Russ has totally stunk the joint up. Like his most recent tape is not terrible, but Zach, it's so incongruent with the level of his contract that teams go, don't want that smoke. Don't want that smoke. So it's just, I don't see that as a possibility, but Jaden Daniels, Bo Nix, I hear you. I've been a little bit skeptical about Caleb Williams. I need to spend a little bit more time, Zach, on Drake May. But like Jaden and Bo, I'm with you on that for the most part, Ryan. Where I'm at right now, that might, evolve as we get a little bit closer to the draft. I'm going to spend more time watching Caleb and Drake. But your thoughts, Zach?
Well, yeah, I agree with you. I don't see a Russ trade partner in the top 5 because why would they? You could just draft a younger quarterback who has much more upside and can be a better player for you than take on a massive contract and take on the baggage of Russell Wilson. I think a better landing spot could be like the Steelers. They're a quarterback away from being a contender with that defense. Maybe the Falcons could be interested in someone like Russ. The Raiders, who are picking number 13 to go after Russ. I don't see a top 5 landing spot for him. But when it comes down to the quarterbacks, we both haven't done our full evaluations. We're still getting into that NFL draft swing, and we're all going to have different opinions on how we rank them. I happen to believe that Drake May would be a perfect fit with Sean Payton, and I think that Sean Payton would agree with that. But I would not cry, Chad, if Jaden Daniels was plan B. I think he's going to be a wonderful quarterback at the next level. And if plan C were to come about, if they did just stay put at 12, don't have to give up any picks, anything like that, you got Bo Nix, or even move back a few picks and got Bo Nix, I can get on board with that too. If the Broncos can come out of this first round, the first day of the draft, with a quarterback, I don't really care who it is, that is a win to me.
Well said. Well said. Tom, what's going on, big dog? We've missed you. You know, we're like Chip from Anchorman. We miss your musk, you know. We miss you. We want to be near you. You know, the awkward scene. If you've seen it, you know what I'm talking about. Tom, what up, bro? He says, I think Sean Payton is going to fall in love with Bo Nix in the pre-draft process. Other teams as well are going to. I think we will need to trade up to get Bo Nix. Sorry, I've been in the basement. Ha, no problem, dude. Then he goes on with a second super chat. Big baller.
Thank you,
Broncos
Tom.
might be bad year after year, but you guys and your team make me proud to be a Broncos fan. Guys are the best in the business. Oh, thank you, big dog.
Very cool.
You're a prince. So sweet of you to say. Means a lot to us. Trust. But that's something, Zach, I've been saying for about a week now. Just kind of this sneaking suspicion that, you know, Bo Nix is going to be competing at the Senior Bowl all week. Then you get to the combine. Then you get to the pro days. By the time you get through all that stuff, I've had a sneaking suspicion, I still do, that his draft stock is going to be, it's going this way, or it could go this way instead of like static or dropping. We'll see.
It's why it's kind of futile to talk about where the picks are going to line up in April when it's only January, because throughout the pre-draft process, I agree with you, and others have said the same thing. Bo Nix is going to test really well, and some team is going to fall in love with him. And all it takes is one to make him a top 10, top 12 pick. But let's say the Broncos get some intel that he's not going to get past 10 or whatever, 9. It's much more palatable, Chad, trading up to 9 or 10 than trading up to 2 or 3. So if they make that move, you can keep Patrick Surtain more than likely. You can keep some draft picks and still get your potential quarterback of the future.
That's right. Sam Bam again, number 3 tonight.
Thank you,
Love
Sam.
it, dude. Thank you. He says, what are your thoughts on trading no more than a 4th-round pick for, say, a Mac Jones or a Justin Fields? Maybe Peyton could bring out some Drew Brees in them. They've had bad coaching and are on rookie contracts. And a similar thing from MBLE X Test Prep, you know, hey, Justin Fields could be like Jake Plummer, stuck on an awful franchise, needing a team like the Broncos to save him. But Zach, the problem is, for every success story of a Jake Plummer transplanting and going to heights that in a career were heretofore unseen, there are 25 examples of abject failure relative to that. You know, once a guy who's drafted or acquired, we'll say drafted to be the guy, burns out, fails to launch in his original destination, it's as rare as hen's teeth that they land somewhere else and then all of a sudden, boom, and everyone's going, wow. There are a few exceptions that prove the rule, like Plummer. I mean, you could now argue Zach Baker Mayfield's one of those guys, but it's pretty rare. What's your answer specifically, though, here for Sam Bam, who's just throwing down like a champ?
Yeah, definitely appreciate you, Sam. And my reaction was uncontrollable one. Wasn't at your question. The idea of going with a Mac Jones or Fields disgusts me, because it's progress you'd be making backwards. It's regression in that case, because how many times in the last 7 years have the Broncos tried to put a Band-Aid, to quote you, Chad, on a massive gaping bullet hole? And my personal opinion is, this is from a football standpoint, so don't get it twisted. Would you, for a partner, okay, would you want someone with bodies or want someone with no bodies, someone with a little more purity to them? And what I mean by that is, do you want a quarterback that's been tainted in the
We are not just football priests here. We're football poets. Okay, continue.
That's right. And Fields, again, he has his warts as a passer, especially. Mac Jones, I mean, being the guy to replace Tom Brady and all that went along with it in the last couple of years with Bill Belichick, hasn't gone swimmingly. I just don't want anyone that's already had another team had their hooks into them, Chad. The Broncos need someone they can take right out of the draft, and they know no other experience but Denver, but the Broncos system, but the Broncos culture. No second hand-me-downs, no sloppy seconds, no reclamation projects. It's not a hard concept. Just draft your quarterback.
By the way, I can't believe I got this wrong. Champ kind, the Anchorman anecdote. The Duchess jumping in as she is wont to do. We love you. We appreciate Michaela. Been with us all the way since the first year we were doing this as a live stream pod. Michaela says from Mount Rushmore upon high, I really want to get our QB in this draft. Hold on. I really want to get our QB in this draft. I'm done goofing around. It's been 8 years. I'm done waiting and I'm done with sloppy seconds. That's right. And it sounds like, that was Zach. One of the things that can make you crazy. I mean, it's like being in a relationship and you feel like you're catching someone in a lie, but they kind of convince you that they're not. But there's that thing in the back of your head. You're like, I don't know. And so it begins to make you feel a little bit crazy. All right. Same thing with covering football teams and being a fan of a football team. Zach, how many years were we like, no, we know John Elway, for example, he's got to be seeing the forest for the trees here. Like, there's no way he wouldn't do X, Y, Z. And then he goes and does something completely opposite of that. And you're going, man, am I just a dumbass? Do I just not know anything? Or am I going crazy here? What is my perception and reckoning of the situation here completely out of whack? In this case, you're not wrong, Michaela. It's been 8 years. And I think we don't have to worry about Sean Payton making us feel crazy. I think he recognizes if you're moving on from Russ, you got to have your own guy, and you're going to have to do it the old-fashioned way. To me, I hear this report, Zach, today, the rumor from Cecil, and I'm encouraged. I'm going, all right, we can trust Sean Payton's discernment on the needs and the issues here.
It's funny. We went from talking about quarterback metrics to, bodies and relationship fidelity, Chad. But I agree with Michaela's point here. Just draft a quarterback. Just take that chance. That's all I ask.
James Moss, what's going on, big dog? It's so good to see you. Really appreciate you. You've been absolutely on a tear of late on Super Chat, and we love you, big dog. He says, first pick or last pick, get your guy and develop him. I believe Sean Payton can do it. I like Bo Nix. Yeah, and look, even though the odds, Zach, say that franchise guy is first round pick and typically first top 15 pick, there are those guys that are drafted later that live to kind of be the exceptions that prove the rule, like Aaron Rodgers, late round one. Drew Brees himself, technically, when he was selected in 01, was the first pick in the second round. If he would have gone in the year after draft, that would have been the last pick in the first round because the Texans came into existence and it was a 32-team league. But I digress. There are other examples. Russell Wilson is one of the examples of a franchise guy emerging that was not a top 15 pick, not a first-round pick. Dak, the list goes on. But for the most part, if you want to really, Zach, bump your odds of hitting on that cue, it's a first-round caliber guy. And I think the closer we get to the draft, the more Bo Nix will be viewed as a bona fide first guy.
Yeah, I'll make the point I made on last night's podcast. I would have infinitely more respect for the Broncos if they took any quarterback in this year's draft, whether it's Penix, Bo Nix, or Pratt or Spencer Rattler versus signing a Darnold or a Jameis Winston. Just go forward, make some progress, no more regression. That's all I ask.
Indeed. We got George Fox saying on Facebook, how many picks do you think we have by the time the draft gets here? Thank you, bro, for the stars. So as it stands, the Broncos are sitting on 6 draft picks currently for 2024. George Payton hinted at trying to acquire more. But, Zach, what's your answer for George?
They could have a few more if they move on from Judy or Simmons or Sutton or whoever. But if they lose some picks, which could be improbable, that would happen on draft night when they swing a trade. But they have, 6 right now, Chad?
6
total?
And no second-round pick.
Yeah, 1 pick in the top 75. So when it's all said and done, you might see 8 or 9 picks, but it could be 6 picks. It could be 2 picks if they make that massive move up, George. So we really don't know yet, and we'll know as the draft gets closer.
Tom jumping in again saying, like throwing a wrench in a shed. Hashtag no bodies. OMG. Ha!
Down the hallway.
Mike again, too. Thank you, big dog. He says, that's what I'm saying. We don't have enough to get any of those top 3 teams to budge. Justin Fields is a young Russ. I'm also not
No, he's
interested
not.
just in drafting a quarterback just to draft a quarterback. Well, I'm with you on that, Mike. Like if you are the Broncos and you do all your due diligence and you decide that none of the guys are first round caliber guys or justified your pick, then you don't take one. You live to stare down the public outcry and the fan base being pissed that you didn't take a quarterback. And hopefully by then you've already figured it out long ago and you've come up with a different option because sure as heck can't be Jarrett Stidham. But we're talking about now, Mike, 6 candidates that are pretty solid. And I'd say 4 of them are solid first round guys, and then 2 more that are, well, for now I'll call them like fringe first round guys, Penix and McCarthy. And it wouldn't surprise me to see McCarthy rise. Like everyone's talking about, oh, and this is true. His stats are low. We talked a little bit last night, Zach, about his stats, but it's based around what he was asked to do uh, by Jim Harbaugh at Michigan. And, going an entire half, for example, without making a pass, you go, well, wait a minute. Do you love your quarterback? Do you trust this guy? And if you did, why don't you let him get out there and show what he can do? Are you that like dogmatic to your game plan that you're not even going to give your quarterback a chance to kind of be the quarterback? But that's the kind of guy Jim Harbaugh is. Those kind of considerations go out the window. If he sees victory through ramming it down your throat on the ground, that's what he's going to do. So my point being, whatever we've seen of JJ McCarthy, and he started a lot of games, but in terms of being able to show what he can do and that kind of taboo word of potential relative to quarterbacks comes into play, it might be that his view within the NFL rises. It's going to be greatly dependent on how he does at the combine and his pro days too.
Yeah, we got Colby C. Collier hopping in. Good to see you, Colby. As always, we need to take what's there. We can't afford to trade everyone. Trade picks to move way down. We need a quarterback, but I'm so worried we end up with Paxton 2.0. I understand that, Colby, and that's what Chad was talking about, being a little gun shy or being a little apprehensive. But if you don't try to get a franchise quarterback, what you end up with is Case Keenum 2.0 or Joe Flacco 2.0 or Teddy Bridgewater 2.0. We're past that point of bridge and holdovers and fill-ins. You need the guy, and you only get the guy by swinging. Paxton Lynch, Brock Osweiler, the failures of the past can't prevent you from having a successful future.
Well said. Triple C, appreciate you, big dog. Ryan jumping in again. Thank you, buddy. He says, thank you guys for what you do for our Broncos community. Here's to the future. I'll be here right with you. Buckham ×7, baby. Denver Broncos for life. MHH for life. Niners beat KC. Get QB1. Yeah. What was that show, that Netflix, Zach? Wasn't it called QB or is it QB1?
Quarterback.
Was that the one Spencer Rattler headlined the first season?
No, that was a different one.
Okay, so I'm not talking about the one that had pros. I'm talking about high school to college.
Yeah, I don't know.
I think it was QB1, dude. I'm telling you.
It might have been.
But I only bring this up because guess who's at the Senior Bowl all week? Spencer Rattler. This was a guy that, as a prep, being recruited into Division I football, a lot of people were talking about him as potentially the next Patrick Mahomes. But then Zach, he ends up kind of having some attitude issues, has to transfer and leave. He ends up at South Carolina, goes from Oklahoma, South Carolina. You wonder what might be there and how much there is there to the rumors of his attitude and his character concerns, etc. There are some other intriguing guys, but he was a dude that a lot of people kind of had earmarked, Zach, as a first round pick someday, to being now, like, unless he can do some just phenomenal catching up here in the pre-draft stuff, probably a mid-round pick, maybe not even drafted.
And we're talking about 2.0s, and Rattler could be like Chad Kelly 2.0, but I'm still willing to take a chance on that. If you don't come out with a quarterback in the first 4, 5, 6 rounds, just take a flyer on someone. You never know what you can get.
Lance Blunt jumping in. What's going on, dude? Very generous super chat. Thank you, Lance. It's very nice to have you. He says, if we draft a quarterback high and the team's plan is to not start him right away while a veteran holds down the fort, who would you guys consider bringing in to fill that role? if the team were to move on from Stidham. I mean, just for life, Denmark's for life. Well, first of all, I got to tell you, Lance, I don't see any incentive for the Broncos to move on from Stidham because he's a journeyman guy that you can at least trust to keep the seat warm. Like, for example, if you had a bona fide guy and he tweaked his ankle and you needed a guy to just be able to keep the offense afloat and keep you competitive for a game, 2 at the most, hey, I'll give Stidham for $5 million. That's why he's not going anywhere. But I would tell you, who else is out there, Zach, that would fit that role? It's not ideal, but let's answer him relative to his exact scenario here. Who's someone you'd feel more comfortable kind of nurturing a rookie, keeping the seat warm besides Stidham?
I don't really care. It doesn't matter. The bridge quarterback doesn't matter. I mean, how much of a mentor is Sam Darnold going to be, Chad? How much of a mentor is Jameis Winston going to be? If a franchise quarterback is going to be a franchise quarterback, he's not going to learn by listening and learn on the bench and in the classroom. He's going to become that quarterback by getting on the field and getting those reps like CJ Stroud, like Anthony Richardson in Indy before his injury. That's the only way the Broncos are going to move forward consistently, is getting that young quarterback and getting him developed. But Lance, no offense, I don't understand the thinking here of cutting Stidham and then going out and trying to find a Jared Stidham 2.0, the same exact guy. He's under contract. He's cheap. He knows the system. He knows the receivers. He knows Peyton's offense, and he's just a temporary solution. The focus and the resources should be on the next quarterback coming in through the draft.
Exactly. And so my answer to you, my friend, is, and it's not a cop-out, I promise you. I mean, there's guys, who would I consider? I would consider Jameis Winston. Would I do it? Probably not. But would I consider it? I would consider Baker Mayfield. But I'm probably not doing that if I'm drafting a guy in the first round, because I want him in there quick, and Baker is going somewhere where he can be the guy. So my answer to you, honestly, is probably under that scenario, I'm moving forward with Stidham as that guy, because you can have your cake and eat it too, so to speak.
Plus, you paid him guaranteed money already. Why cut him and then eat that money for no reason?
Right. Guys, we're at 37 minutes, so the time flies when you're having a blast. Any burning topics, get them in the chat. We will do our dangdest to get to them before we dip on out of here. David Youngkin, what's going on, bro? Nice to see you tonight. Hope you're doing well. Try and stay positive, my friend, with us, along the way. We'll help you keep that glass half full kind of mindset here. Dave Bristol jumping in. Good to see you, my friend. Thank you, Dave. He says, I cannot get my mind around the cost of moving up to the top 3, but neither can I feel good about not getting someone who has a real chance of being the guy. Exactly. It's that you're you're overcoming the urges born of trauma to just be conservative and not take a swing, and that trauma comes from a huge swing and a miss on Russ. And in the case of Sean Payton, hey, you basically traded a second round pick and Bradley Chubb to have Sean Payton as your head coach. But so that's still, the jury's still out on that overall trade and the value thereof. I think in the final analysis, it'll be viewed through the prism of history as having been a great trade for the Broncos. But that Russ trade, Zach, still has everybody a little bit gun shy about going too far out over the skis for a quarterback and mortgaging more of the future, whatever limitations exist currently, Zach, relative to this roster. It's not because of bad drafting per se. It's not because of anything other than they just haven't had the darts. They gave up the darts to get Russ.
I understand the point here. I get it. It doesn't have to be black or white, though. There's a middle ground, and it's staying at 12 or maybe even moving down a few spots, getting some capital, and still taking a chance on a quarterback. But I see the argument both ways, Chad, from the fan base.
Definitely. James, again, thank you, big dog. He says middle of the road QB is what you will be. Need that guy, the guy, our guy. I'm with Zach. Yeah, exactly. And here's the thing. This is one of the things, Zach, that would make me feel crazy covering the Broncos for the decade plus that Elway was calling the shots, is, especially post Super Bowl 50, is, they kind of captured lightning in a bottle in 2015. You had a young, inexperienced, but very middle of the road Brock Osweiler taking over for a significantly diminished Peyton Manning, and then Peyton Manning coming back, still in a diminished role physically, but you still got that brain, and you go all the way and you win it all thanks to a phenomenal defense and just your team coming together at the right time. And from that point forward, though, the Broncos convinced themselves they are the one middle of the road quarterback away from winning it all. Even Gary Kubiak was totally down to just start Trevor Siemian until the cows come home because of that. Yeah, I think even Kubiak fell prey to this. But look at all the quarterback acquisitions, whether the draft or free agency, Zach, under the John Elway regime post Peyton, and it's one gaslight. I mean, when you gaslight yourself, man, it's the implications are scary. One gaslight QB after another. Ronk, the Broncos hired Cody Rager as the new VP of player personnel. Thank you for bringing that up. We got so consumed with the rumor and the draft talk, we forgot to mention it. But yeah, Zach, the Broncos, wooed the former assistant. I'm trying to remember, assistant VP of scouting director, assistant scouting director of the Saints, Cody Rager, who was hired today as the Broncos VP of player personnel because Sean Payton, who worked with him, he was there in New Orleans, Rager for 9 years, was impressed by him and saw an opportunity to bring him into the fold.
Yeah, I mean, you would know more about him, Chad. You had the nice write-up for the website today. What I know is that the Saints have historically drafted well in the Sean Payton, Mickey Loomis era, and their scouting department is very highly recommended. And everything that I read on Twitter from people who cover the Saints says that Rager was a big loss to the Broncos. So it's only going to help the scouting department. And like I've been saying, this draft is the biggest crossroads the Broncos have been at in the last decade. They have to get it right. So the more manpower, the better.
Yes, it's a good move. It's a housekeeping type of move, the kind of underrated behind closed doors type of thing that can really help move a franchise forward. But going into this, the Broncos had a very good front office structure relative to scouting and both on the player and pro personnel side of things. And Rager is going to be a nice complement to Stark, Durso, and how do you pronounce it, Moogie?
Mm-hmm.
So it's a good core that is working under George Payton. Mike, again, thank you, brother. He says, Zach, what do you think of Justin Fields? I've always thought Russ was nothing but a guy that made some plays with a great defense to keep him in games. He was never a John Elway who could carry them. Go ahead, Zach.
Well, I don't know. I didn't get a chance to answer Mike earlier. I think it was you who said that Fields is a younger Russ, and I could not disagree more with that. Russ came into the league a much better passer than anything we've seen from Fields to this point. Great athlete, great runner, pretty exciting player to watch, but his pocket presence is terrible. Him as a passer overall is just pretty horrific to watch. He takes a lot of sacks. He turns the ball over a lot. So in that sense, he's comparable to Russell Wilson. But as a passer, you're never going to win much with him. He's a gadget player, much like Cordell Stewart. I'm not a Fields guy. I might come off biased. I've been pounding the drum since 2021 that George Payton made the right call taking Surtain over Fields. So this falls in my ethos of no sloppy seconds, no reclamation projects. Why trade capital for Fields and then have to pay him a contract when that comes up? No one tainted. Just draft a freaking pure passer from college. That's all I ask, please.
Well said, man. Couldn't have said it better myself. David jumping in again. Thank you, buddy. Draft a quarterback, build around him like the Texans did. Yeah, and you know what? On that subject of like the Texans as a model, look, this time last year, we weren't in the QB first round market, obviously, because we were coming off of Russ year one, and they had just hired Sean Payton. So it wasn't much in our wheelhouse, but anytime CJ Stroud would get brought up, I'd say, hey, miss me on the Ohio State quarterbacks. You know what I'm saying? Miss me on that. None of them pan out. He ends up being the highest drafted Ohio State quarterback ever. So there is that slight qualifier, but he finally snaps that streak. Now, it's not like he went on and won a Super Bowl yet. Time will tell exactly how it shakes out, but there's no reason to believe that he's not trending in the franchise direction. I mean, I think he was kind of snubbed for at least a Pro Bowl nod this year. But nevertheless, how does it relate to this year? Well, and the model, Bo Nix, he's a system guy. He's a system guy. Oregon quarterbacks don't make it in the league, etc. So it kind of takes some of those paradigms, at least I think for me, and it makes me a little bit more, a lot more actually, open minded to just, hey, some of that, get back to what the Nicks and the Scotts and the Erics and everybody are always trying to tell us, which is scout the player, not the school, not the system, etc.
I think CJ Stroud and the Houston turnaround is best case scenario for the Broncos, but it proves that it could happen. You need two things in place: the coaching and the quarterback. The Texans have both with Bobby Slowick and CJ Stroud. The Broncos have the coaching with Sean Payton and company. You need the quarterback because could you name one offensive lineman on the Texans roster besides Laramie Tunsil? Most people can't. Can you name one starting receiver besides maybe Nico Collins or Tank Dell on the Texans roster? You can't do it. But the quarterback made everyone else around him better. He lifted all boats, to quote you, Chad. It's something we didn't see in the Russell Wilson era. It's something we would see in the insert name here era if he is the right guy. That's why it's so crucial the Broncos hit on that pick.
Exactly. Well said. The Duchess again jumping in. Love you. She says, if you don't draft a quarterback, you end up with no quarterback to move forward with. You miss 100% of the chances you do not take. That's right. And we talked a little bit about this last night, and that is that even Sean Payton, we know the honeymoon, if there whatever honeymoon was there for Sean Payton, it's gone now. Not just because they finished 8-9, Zach, but because of the controversial nature toward the end of benching Russ, and so that's gone. Now you got to win, baby, and you got to find a way, make a way. The best way to do that is to get your guy, your ideal fit for your scheme. Go find your newfangled Drew Brees and make some hay.
This is exactly where I am, Michaela. I'm in complete agreement with you. You got to take the chance. You got to swing. You're never going to hit a home run, to use another analogy, unless you swing the bat. And the Broncos have to swing and swing hard this April.
A good point here from our friend Jeremy Sean in the chat. We talk about system and this and that. How much is the player? How much is the scheme? All that. The fact that Russell Wilson, because that's another thing that again comes back into play as a detractor of Bo Nix is the assistant quarterback, etc. I mean, Russell Wilson. What was the stat, Jeremy? 60% of the sacks he took, or pardon me, 60% of the sacks on Russell Wilson were basically credited to him. It was his fault that he was sacked. And I do also agree with you, Jeremy, that, to my eye, I would have thought it was actually even more than that, like 75% of the sacks. I mean, the Broncos, he was in the 50s last I checked on the stats. That's how many times he was sacked. I mean, think about the world champion 2015 Broncos. Zach, they had 52 sacks that year. And it felt like every time a quarterback dropped back, it was Von Miller or D. Ware or Malik Jackson, taking them down. Russ was sacked more than that. And most of them were on him. What am I getting at? Clearly not a fit for what Sean Payton's looking for, right? Sean Payton wants the ball out. He wants on schedule. He wants to work the short to intermediate routes. And when you start looking at some of those schematic, philosophical hallmarks of Sean Payton's whole thing, the quarterbacks that kind of rise up in terms of, fit, Bo Nix, I throw Drake May, even though as it stands, probably going to take a king's ransom to move up and get him, maybe even Penix. So you might not, Zach, necessarily have to trade up into the top 3 to land a Bo Nix, right? You might have to, when it's all said and done, move up a little to guarantee you get him, but maybe not all the way up into the top 3.
And, speaking of sacks and speaking of CJ Stroud and the Texans, I just looked it up. They gave up just 5 fewer sacks than the Broncos did all of last season. But you wouldn't ever know that considering how elevated the play was on the offense because of the quarterback. So I was a Russ guy. Chad, you were a big Russ guy as well. But I think with time and some distance from the situation, we both kind of realized how much Russ was hampering the offense by scrambling into pressure and by taking sacks that weren't necessarily the offensive line's fault. That is the number one improvement we're going to see from the rookie quarterback, whoever it may be next year.
All right, guys, we're going to rapid fire a few of these great comments and super chats because we're about out of time. Lawrence on Facebook, good to see you tonight, bro. He says, what's up, guys? Much love. It's beautiful, warm night in Colorado. Kind of late. Yeah, it's kind of weird, this warm weather of late, right, in the Rockies. He says, who's going to carry the boats? Good question. Time will tell. I think it's going to be, maybe we'll start getting some insight to that this week. Again, keep an eye. Scott's there all week at the Senior Bowl. Cody Dub jumping in. Even if we get a QB, who's he going to throw it to? We got one good receiver. Are there any good draft or dude? This is a good wide receiver class for the draft. I would recommend Cody if you haven't done so yet, and this is to anybody who wants to get acquainted better without spending hours and hours reading this, watching that on the 2024 draft class. Just for now, go read the 2 articles Eric Trickle has up on the Senior Bowl rosters, the American team and the national team, and you'll learn a lot. You'll learn a lot about the class, individual prospects, what position groups are the deepest and strongest. And this year, Cody, wide receiver is stacked in the draft. So there are going to be a lot of opportunities for that. And Zach, who knows? They might end up trading away Jerry Jeudy. We'll see. They might have a bigger need there than we recognized going in.
It's also an insane free agent class for receivers. You have Michael Pittman, Mike Evans, T. Higgins, Hollywood Brown. The Broncos can't afford any of them. I mean, that's pretty obvious, but they'll be able to reload at the position at some point in the offseason.
Ryan, again, thank you, brother. He says, just looked at the draft order. I see 4 quarterbacks off the board by 8. I see the New York Jets maybe drafting Rodgers' replacement at 10, too. We might need to target pick 9 to get anyone relevant. Don't know, guys. Thoughts? It's possible. But the point here is you might not necessarily have to get all the way up into the top 3 to get your guy. If your guy ends up being a Bo Nix, for example, I think they'll give it one last go around. I think that pick for the Jets with Rodgers, I think they'll bring in someone they think can help them win this year with Rodgers rather than taking a quarterback there or trade back. But yeah, Zach, they might have to get up as high as 9. I mean, Falcons need a quarterback too.
But again, moving up to 9, it's going to cost you a little bit, but nothing like it would cost you to move up to the top 3. So if you're against the Broncos mortgaging the future, but you still want a quarterback, that might be the best of both worlds.
All right, guys, 2 more, and then we're dipping on out of here. Sam, again, making up for lost time, so to speak. Thank you, brother.
Sam.
He says, I didn't realize Michigan quarterback J.J. McCarthy declared for the draft. I'm watching highlight videos of him right now. Maybe draft him in the 2nd round. Mahomes him for a year, then have him torment Jim Harbaugh for years. Yeah, we'll see, man. Like, again, he's a very polarizing prospect. But one of the kind of consensus views on J.J. McCarthy is the book on him is not written yet because Jim Harbaugh, for whatever reason, that's what kind of creates some of these questions, didn't really ask him to do that much as a quarterback. But in critical moments and critical situations, when he was asked, he executed, he got the job done. So, in other words, there's some potential there, Zach, that could be untapped. Teams might fall in love with him. I think he ends up probably a 2nd round pick, just like Sam's thinking here. We'll see.
I mean, I'll certainly eat crow if JJ goes on to be a Mahomes level talent or anything close to it. But Jim Harbaugh has Herbert now. So unless McCarthy is going to be comparable or better than Justin Herbert, I don't see too much tormenting going on. I think you need someone with a much higher ceiling than JJ, who is Mac Jones. To me, Mac Jones 2.0.
Indeed. Ronk, thank you, brother. Always helping us punctuate every single stream with a very positive message, uplifting, optimistic, supportive. You are a prince. But guys, this has been a great conversation. We're going to dip out of here, but just a few messages first, so don't leave quite yet.
Another tremendous installment of the Mile High Huddle podcast. If you're not doing so, please follow us on Twitter at the MHH Pod. You can follow the main account on Twitter at Mile High Huddle, Chad at Chad and Jensen, myself at Kelberman NFL, and Scott, our producer, at Scout Kennedy. If you guys want some merch like we're rocking each and every single freaking podcast, check out mhhmerch.com and get you some. Also, please leave us a like at facebook.com/Mile High Huddle Pod. You can also find us on Instagram at mile_high_huddle. And if you're on Apple Podcasts, make sure you're leaving your football priest a 5-star review for a chance to win some of that merch each and every single month. But if anything, y'all, guys and gals, ladies and gentlemen, please subscribe, like, and share this video and every video you see on the MHH channel. It really helps us grow and reach more Broncos fans just like you.
A mile high salute to the great Super Chat superstars and supporters tonight. We're talking the Duchess. We're talking, that's Michaela Parker. We're talking John Juno. We're talking Sam Bam going off. The Papa Bear, David McElrath, Phil, McLaughlin down in Tucson, Patrick, The Ronk, Taylor Christensen, Mike Edel, Ryan, Tom Lakoff, James Moss, George Fox, Colby C. Collier, the Triple C, Lance Blunt. Let's see. Did I already say David Yunkin? David Yunkin, yes. Dave Bristol, Lawrence Rivera, Cody Dubb. Love each and every one of you. Appreciate you. Keep it locked here. MHH this week. Also, make sure, again, I want to remind you that you're following Scott on Twitter and especially that you're subbed to him on YouTube. He's going to be dropping a lot of content on these quarterbacks this week in Mobile. So we'll see you, Zach and I, though, Thursday night.
Have a great start to your week. We'll see you Thursday. Take care. And as always, go Broncos.